Hi, it's Robin. When Satoru Iwata passed away in 2015, he had become a household name as the president of Nintendo. Some of my kids still talk about Mr. Iwata affectionately now, 5 years after his passing. While he became very famous from his Nintendo Direct appearances, of course, he had a long career that went back way before that. Before he worked for Nintendo, he worked at and eventually became president at HAL Laboratories. And while there, he programmed many NES games such as Golf, Pinball, and Joust. In fact, he programmed Joust apparently way back in 1983, but for various reasons it didn't get released until 1987. But you see, it does have the HAL Laboratories. And of course, he worked on many other projects. He was known as an amazing programmer. He was known for turning doomed projects right around and getting that game shipped. But before his HAL Laboratory days, working on NES and many other Nintendo consoles, his first clearly credited game is actually Super Billiards for the MSX computer. But before that, going way back into around 1980, 1981, Iwata was actually a Commodore fan. Yes, he owned a Commodore PET 2001, much like the one I have here in my collection. And he programmed a game for it and shared it with his group of Commodore PET using friends when he was just around age 19 or 20. And then when he graduated from college, he joined HAL Laboratory, but before he started working on NES games, well, it didn't even exist, he actually worked on some of the very first VIC-20 games. In particular, this game called Star Battle, which is a clone of Galaxian. Actually, I have 2 copies of it here. I think this is a later printing. I've got one of the metal badge ones here. Well, you know, this still has the plastic on it. Oh, look at that. Oh, 40 years. I love those metal badged games. So I've got Star Battle here. You can see it has the classic Galaxian shapes. The VIC-20 did not have any sprites, so everything does have to be done through character graphics. And you see here how it says copyright 1981 Commodore Japan. It was actually HAL Laboratories that did the work, and it was credited to Commodore Japan. But really, it was just programmed by Iwata. And just to give a quick try here, F1 to start. And it's quite a good Galaxian clone for the VIC-20's limitations, and especially considering it was programmed when the VIC-20 was absolutely new. So the programmers on it were figuring everything out from scratch. There were no tricks or anything to draw upon, or there were no well-known tricks. It's a little bit glitchy, but again, no hardware sprites. It's actually a bit like Spectrum games. So it's become somewhat well known that Iwata worked on this game because he left a signature in the ROM of the game. So to look at the code for this game and to reveal this Easter egg, I unfortunately can't use the real cartridge because it automatically boots, and the only ways around that are to actually modify the computer essentially, or, well, perhaps some hardware device that I don't own. So instead, I'm going to be using this little RAM card. This is a 32K RAM expansion made by my friend Sam from Dorktronic. You may be able to find them on eBay, and if you can't, there's other RAM expansions if you're wanting to do this yourself. Got a number of dip switches here that can be set for different RAM configurations. It also has a reset button here that I'll probably use a few times, so that's the button I'm going to hit if I say I'm resetting the computer. So I'm just going to pop that in the computer here. Always make sure it's turned off. In this VIC-20 I have Jiffy DOS installed. Morris Randall himself gave me this very early version of Jiffy DOS. So I installed it many years ago. I mostly just like it because it has this wedge built in, so I can navigate my SD card easily. So I've got a binary image of the Star Battle that I download off the internet. I'm sure you can find it with a little bit of Googling. I'm just going to load that with the percentage sign, but that's the same as typing, well actually I might as well do it, load, 8, 1. And with this RAM expansion enabled and RAM in block 5, that is from A1000 to BFFF. So this RAM expander puts RAM in the same location where normally the ROM code from the cartridge goes. So essentially we're just loading a cartridge image, but instead of on ROM, it's in RAM, and it lets us avoid the auto start problem so we can actually analyze the code. So I've loaded that, but before we start running it, we're going to go into this SuperMon directory, and I'm going to load up SuperMon for the VIC and run that. Now, there are excellent cartridge-based monitors, machine language monitors, which let you analyze, also known as a debugger on some other systems. But because we're actually analyzing a cartridge, I prefer to go with the software solution. There may be other ways of doing this. Okay, so we'll just take a look at RAM and just find the original discovery. You see over on the right-hand side, there's some text here. These are the hex bytes. And this is their PET ASCII representation. And we just press M to further dump the RAM. Use joystick, and it says write game over, player 1, player 2. And here we go. Copyright 1981, Commodore, Japan. And here is the start of the Easter egg. This program was written by Satoru Iwata, April 19, 1981. HAL Laboratory, Akihabara, Tokyo, Japan. That is the Easter egg, but that isn't really a new revelation. Might be new to you, but I don't know, for some number of years, we've known about that. But I hadn't looked at it closely myself before. And so I was just looking at it the other day. And what I noticed was that all these strings, like, for example, Commodore Japan, end with a 0. That's a null termination. This program was written by, but here, there's a null terminator for that line. And here, after Iwata's name. So that made me wonder that maybe this wasn't just pure text. If he's bothering to put null terminators in, as if it's one of the strings that can be printed, perhaps these are printable strings. Perhaps there is code that will display these strings. That gave me hope that maybe this Easter egg isn't purely text. Maybe there is code that will display this text in-game. Okay, a spoiler, there is almost. So rather than make you wait to the end, I'll show you the Easter egg now, and then we'll look a bit more at how it works and how I discovered it. So if we just look at the memory at A000, this is actually the startup here. This is the low byte, high byte of where the code starts, A01F. So if we look at that, disassemble that code. Right here, we're loading A with 0 and storing it in 1A33. Well, that is the flag that triggers the Easter egg. So all we have to do is change this 0 into a 1. And I'll press that reset button and we can see the Easter egg. So now this isn't the way that the Easter egg was originally intended to be revealed, but I am almost certain that that code was disabled. Here comes the screen. This program was written by Satoru Iwata, April 19, 1981, HAL Laboratory, Akihabara, Tokyo, Japan. You see Iwata's name flashing there. There. So that is the Easter egg. It's a secret, hidden credit screen. And as far as I know, that hasn't been found until now. But there's a little bit more to it, so let's dig into that. If you're interested to learn more, stay with me. Okay, so I'm back in SuperMon, and here is the print routine. And we won't have to go into this in great detail, but essentially when A135 is called, the jump subroutine, you load the X with the string number that you want printed. And it looks up here, this is the Y position of the string in a table at A31E. That's the line that particular string will be printed at. Everything's kind of hard-coded, where each string is already specified where it will appear on the screen in a series of tables. And then that value is loaded into the Y register, which is then used in this table at AE07, which is the low byte of screen memory where it's going to be displayed at the left edge. And then we add in the X offset for that same string, again, in yet another table. And we store it in these two pointers at 56 hex and 58 and 0 page. And these are going to be 0 page pointers to screen memory. D to disassemble the next page. And now this is the high byte of screen memory. In case there was any carry from the low byte edition, that's just added in here. 6502 does not have an add without carry, and that's stored in the high byte pointer of the screen memory. And then now that high byte is stored, strips it off to make it just a 9-bit value from 0 to 1 FFF hex, then adds in 96 hex, which brings it up to color memory and stores that in this pointer at 59. So we got two pointers, one to screen memory, one to color RAM, ready to write. And then the X value is doubled. This is a common pattern. Move it to the accumulator, arithmetic shift left to multiply it by 2, and that's so it can read from this table, which is actually pointers to all the strings that are printable. So we get a pointer at 54, 55, and 0 page. That points to the beginning of the string data that we looked at already, such as printing Commodore Japan. And then very simply, there's a loop here that loads in one character from the string data, checks if it's 0 for that null termination, and then just stores it into memory, and also looks up the color of the string and then stores that into color memory. So each string can also be assigned a unique color. And then the Y is incremented, and then the branch is done, and we return. Once I knew how that print routine worked for a string, then it was just a matter of going through the different strings, like this one here. There's Commodore Japan, and this is where the Easter egg text starts. So A29A, it was just a matter of going through the table until I found that A29A was string 1E hex. That is, you load X with 1E, call the print routine, and then this string will be printed. So I knew there was a good chance if there was a routine to print this Easter egg, then it would probably start with the code load X, 1E, and then jump to subroutine A135, just like that, well, 2 lines. If so, we can just hunt through the cartridge memory for the hex equivalent of that assembly language, which is A2, 1E, 2035, A1. And press return. And there we go. So let's look at that. A51F. There we go. Print string 1E. And jump to subroutine. And I think this is a delay routine. Then it's just going to load X with 1F. That's the next string. That's with Iwata's name in it. and so on. There we go. There is the Easter egg code. So it exists. Now my next challenge was, how do we trigger it? Usually these Easter eggs are triggered, either through joystick controls, but more commonly on Commodore computers, there's a certain key press that's involved. So can we find that? Oh, so just back up just a little bit to A505, and this is where we see this code is executed, and then we load A from location 1A33, and if it is not equal to 0, then we branch ahead to A514, and otherwise we return. So this is where I knew that this right here was the flag that triggered the Easter egg, because, it's as plain as day. It just checks this value and continues on here to the rest of the Easter egg. So we know the value that the Easter egg checks is 1A33. So what sets 1A33? And this is where it got a little bit disappointing. If we hunt through memory for 331A, it's in low byte, high byte order. There are 3 instances of it, but both of these values here, that's the one we were just looking at, and this one at A57F just sets the flag back to 0 after the Easter egg has been displayed. So that only leaves A027, at least for obvious triggers. It'd be possible that there's some convoluted way, but almost all this code is very upfront. It's very direct. I haven't seen any sign of anything being hidden or obfuscated on purpose. And this A027 is the one we already looked at too. Yeah, right here where it's set to 0. And we had hacked it just to set it to 1 to trigger the egg right away. So unfortunately, I didn't find the way to trigger the egg there. So I had to start looking for the keyscan routine. Now, some games just do a JSR FFE4, which reads the keyboard using the kernel routine. So anyway, for whatever reason, I didn't use that. But I did find that the keyscan routine is at A798. The keyboard hardware just uses a simple 8-bit, two 8-bit ports. One, you write an 8-bit value into it for which of the 8 rows you want to scan. Not physical rows like this, they're electronically laid out. There's 64 potential keys, 8 by 8. It's like a matrix. And you write a value into 9120, and then you read back from 9121, and from there you can figure out what key was pressed. So this first row, I can probably show a chart, but basically 1 bit is always turned off and all the rest are on for this value. So EF, that means it's going to scan column 4, bit 4, numbered 0 through 7 from right to left. It's going to scan column 4, and then it's going to check here if the high bit was set, or actually if it was clear, and that is the F1 key from the title screen. Press F1 to start a game. So if we hit D to continue, here this DF is then stored into 9120, the port. That means we want to scan column 5. And again, we're checking the high bit. And that is the F3 key. And if we jump ahead a bit here, you get the idea. But hidden down here at the bottom is a small table where we're suddenly using indexing. So this means we're going to look at 3 different values. Disassemble from A7EC. We're going to look at 3 values from this table, then set the port for what keys we want to, or what key we want to scan, read it back out, and compare it, and then we AND it with another table here. We'll look at those tables in a second. This is not working very good. A7FC. It's disassembly a fixed number of bytes here. So it's hard to get all on the screen. Is that the part we want? Okay. So anyway, we're going to go through this little table of values, AND it, and if it's not equal, we're just going to jump away. A806 just quits out of the routine. Otherwise, we're going to decrement X and then branch for another go-around back up to A7E. In short, this is checking for 3 keys all at once in rapid succession. And we can look at the column A807. Okay, so these are the 3 rows we're searching for. And then 02, 04, and 01 are the columns that we're looking for. Anyway, I worked it out, and it's looking for the keys left shift, right shift, and Commodore. Those 3 keys. Okay, and only if that's true, okay, so it loads 1 and returns, well, that 1 needed to be stored in our Easter egg flag at 1A33. But unfortunately, if we look, A595, this is the call to the keyscan routine. Well, it just immediately loads. It throws away that 1 that should have been stored in the flag. So this is the sad part of this tale, besides how bad my explanation is. So basically, I am pretty much certain that originally Iwata had this load A with number 1. He stored it in 1A33, which then would trigger the Easter egg. That is, if somebody pressed down Commodore Shift, it would trigger the Easter egg. But before the game shipped, he commented out that 1 line of code, but left all the other code intact. So the Easter egg code is complete. Well, I already showed it to you. But unfortunately, as far as I can tell, it cannot be triggered because Iwata, whether, I don't know, he thought he'd get in trouble, or maybe he asked his boss and his boss says no, or word got around. I don't know. We can only guess. So the final thing we have to do here today is figure out how to patch this so that the Easter egg will work. Okay, so normally we could just patch these 3 bytes, load A with number 1, and return are the 3 bytes we would need to put a jump patch in here. But unfortunately, branch if not equal 8A06 is relying, this bit of code up here, is relying on there being a return to subroutine here. So what we can do instead is point that, I found that there's another RTS at A78F. So now we're sending that branch backwards to an RTS that's still within range of the branch, 100, give or take 128 bytes either direction. So now we are free down here to assemble at 0804 jump. We have to jump somewhere, and I did some digging around and found that BDF0 is free. Okay, so now we've patched that in, and now the last thing we have to do, we'll just look at BDF0. And basically, BE, this is the very end of the cartridge memory. These last 512 bytes are graphics memory. As best I can tell, these bytes right here aren't really being used for anything. I think they're garbage. If I'm wrong, then check the comments or the description. I'll provide a different patch. But as far as I can tell, this works fine. Okay, and so all we have to do at that BDF0 is increment 1A33, the Easter egg flag, and then do our own return. So we've used up 4 bytes there. Okay, and that's all within the cartridge ROM. That could be saved out if you want or burned on a flash. We're not going to do that now. Okay, so I'm going to press the reset button. We're going to test out our patch. Here we go, mission, destroy enemy. Push the start button, and this is where we'll do it. There's the Easter egg. There. This program was written by Satoru Iwata, April 19, 1981, almost 40 years ago, HAL Laboratory, Akihabara. No. So I looked that up. That's actually a district where they sell lots of electronics, and it's actually where Iwata would have hung out when he was getting into computers around 1980 or so. Nowadays, it's like a pop culture place with lots of anime and so on. Sorry, I can't pronounce any of these words right. I'm just a dumb Canadian, eh? And I don't get out much. Okay, so I hope that was informative. You enjoyed this look at this hidden Easter egg. I've got more Easter eggs I've discovered that I'm going to be doing videos about soon. So please subscribe. Thank you very much to my patrons who help support my work on this channel. And I'd like to dedicate this to, as one of my sons still calls him, Mr. Iwata. I'd like to dedicate this to him, his hard work. He's an inspiration, an amazing programmer, but also somebody who would bring a laugh and enjoyed life and encouraged others to play. Hats off to you, Mr. Iwata. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.